I don't know if anyone will believe me. And honestly, I don't blame you if you don't. For a long time, I tried to convince myself that it didn't happen, that it was just a nightmare, or maybe a hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. But the truth is, I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know that I was taken. That night started like any other. I had been working late. I'm an electrician, so sometimes jobs run longer than expected, and this particular Wednesday had dragged into the evening. By the time I finished and signed off, the streets were mostly empty. It was fall, one of those cold nights where the air feels sharper than usual, and you can see your breath hanging in front of you like smoke. I remember thinking how quiet it was as I walked toward my car. The city wasn't big, but usually there were still cars passing, dogs barking, people talking on the sidewalks. That night, it was eerily still. My boots scraped against the pavement and the sound echoed too loudly. It made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't quite explain. I got in the car, started the engine, and headed home. My drive usually takes 20 minutes. Straight road, then a left into a wooded stretch before the houses begin again. I've taken that road thousands of times. I could drive it half asleep. And maybe that's why I noticed it. The lights. At first, I thought it was just a plane flying unusually low. A bright white glow appeared above the tree line to my right. Too bright for a street lamp, too round for a helicopter. It didn't move like anything I had seen before. It hovered, perfectly still. I slowed the car, rolled down the window, and leaned out to get a better look. That's when the glow pulsed. Not like a flicker or a spotlight turning, but like it breathed. It expanded, dimmed, then brightened again in a rhythm. My chest tightened as I realized I wasn't hearing anything. No hum, no engine, not even crickets in the woods. Just silence. I told myself to keep driving. I really did, but I couldn't. I slowed until the car crawled and my eyes stayed locked on the light. Then, without warning, it shot forward across the road and hovered directly above me. The interior of the car filled with a white brilliance so sharp I had to shield my eyes. I slammed the brakes and sat there frozen, breathing hard. My first thought was that I should get out, run, hide in the woods. But before I could even touch the handle of the door, I couldn't move. It was like my body had shut down. My arms, my legs, even my tongue felt paralyzed. I was aware of everything, the way my heart raced, the way my skin prickled with heat, but I couldn't twitch a finger. My hand stayed glued to the wheel, useless. Then the sound came. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even mechanical. It was a low vibration deep inside my skull, like someone humming directly into my brain. The pitch rose slowly, steadily, until it filled every part of me. And then darkness. I must have blacked out, but it didn't feel like sleep. It felt like being ripped out of reality. 1 second I was in my car, staring at a blinding light, and the next, I was somewhere else. The air was colder, thinner, and the smell hit me instantly. Like metal and antiseptic, the way hospitals smell if you've ever been in an operating room. My eyes adjusted, and I realized I was lying on some kind of table. The surface was smooth and hard beneath me, colder than any surface should have been. Above me, lights. Not lamps, not bulbs, but panels of glowing squares embedded in the ceiling, soft and unnatural. The walls curved, metallic, but seamless, as if molded in one piece. And then I saw them. 3 figures stood near my feet, watching me. At first, my brain tried to make them human. They were roughly the same size, though thinner, their movements unnaturally fluid. Their skin was gray, pale, almost translucent. And their heads, too large, too elongated, with eyes that were nothing but black pools. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come.
I wanted to run, but my body still refused to respond. I could only watch as one of them approached, its long fingers curling slightly as if it were studying me. When it touched my arm, the sensation was like static electricity, tiny shocks prickling through my skin. My vision blurred, and in my head, a whisper formed, not with words exactly, but with meaning. Do not resist. The message wasn't comforting, it was final, absolute. The figure raised his hand, and instantly the ceiling shifted. A section slid open, and a strange device descended. It looked like a cluster of metal rods ending with points that glowed faintly blue. They lowered it above my chest, and I swear I felt the heat before it even touched me. I don't know how long they kept me there.
The device above my chest began to hum. The sound wasn't like anything I'd heard before, high-pitched, metallic, yet vibrating deep in my bones. The blue glow at the tips of those rods grew brighter, and I felt an invisible weight pressing down on me, like the air itself had thickened. I tried to twist, to move even a muscle, but my body remained useless, trapped in that strange paralysis. Only my eyes darted frantically from side to side, trying to take in every detail. One of the beings leaned closer, its enormous black eyes reflecting the blue light. I swear I saw my own reflection inside them, tiny and distorted, as though I was staring into an endless void. Then the device lowered until it was only inches from my chest. Heat surged through my rib cage, sharp and biting, though nothing physically touched me. I gasped, at least I think I did, but the sound came out weak, strangled. The sensation wasn't just pain, it was like they were reaching inside me without breaking the skin. My heart stuttered, racing 1 second, sluggish the next. And then, pictures. Not on a screen, not like a dream, inside my head. Images flashing one after another. Cities burning, skies torn open with fire, oceans swallowing entire coastlines. I saw people screaming, running, collapsing in clouds of smoke. And then I saw the stars, thousands of them swirling, colliding, exploding. I didn't understand it. Was it a vision? A warning? Or something they were putting in me, planting deep into my mind? The being pulled back slightly, and the device retracted into the ceiling with a soft hiss. My chest felt heavy, like something had been taken out or put in. I lay there trembling, unable to breathe normally. My skin was clammy, and a cold sweat dripped down the sides of my face. Then one of them moved to my right, holding something small in its hand. At first I thought it was a tool, but when it leaned closer, I realized it was alive. It looked like a sphere, no bigger than a golf ball, translucent, with veins of light running through it. The thing pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. The being pressed it against the inside of my wrist, and a shock went through me. My vision went white for a moment. When it cleared, the sphere was gone. I couldn't tell if they had implanted it, or if it had simply melted into me. Terror flooded me in waves. I wanted to beg them to stop, to scream that I wasn't a test subject, that I was just a man who had been driving home from work. But none of it mattered. To them, I wasn't a person. I was an experiment. At some point, I noticed movement in the corner of the room, another table, and on it, someone else. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s. Her eyes were open, wide with the same frozen terror I felt. She couldn't move either. A different set of beings surrounded her, operating strange devices. One of them lowered something that looked like a mask over her face, and her eyes rolled back instantly. I tried to call out to her, to let her know she wasn't alone, but again my mouth betrayed me. Nothing came out. The sight of her made it real. It wasn't a dream or a hallucination. There was another human here, a victim just like me. Time stretched, meaningless. It could have been minutes or hours. I felt needles of cold against my legs, the sensation of instruments tracing along my spine, a burning prick in the back of my neck.
My consciousness slipped in and out, fading like a bad radio signal. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The being stepped back. One tilted its head, studying me like a finished project. And then my vision blurred again, white, blinding. When the light faded, I was no longer on the table. I was sitting in my car. The engine was off, but the keys were in the ignition. My hands gripped the steering wheel, and my chest heaved with ragged breaths. The road ahead was empty, silent, just as it had been before. I looked at the clock on the dashboard, 11:42 p.m. The last time I remembered checking before the light appeared, it had been just after 10 o'clock, almost 2 hours gone. Panic set in fast. My body ached in places it shouldn't. My wrists felt tender. My chest throbbed with a deep ache, and there was a sharp sting at the back of my neck. I reached up and touched the spot. My fingers came away with a smear of blood. I turned on the overhead light and looked closer in the mirror. There was a small mark, almost like a burn, a perfect circle, no bigger than a coin. My heart hammered. I twisted my wrist and found something else, a faint bluish bruise where the sphere had pressed against me. The skin pulsed slightly under the surface, as if something was still alive inside. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, trying to process. The woods around me were silent again, too silent. No crickets, no owls, just emptiness. Finally, I forced the engine to start and drove home. Every mile felt like a lifetime. My headlights cut through the trees, but every flicker of shadow I flinched. I expected that glow to appear above me at any second. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked strange. Not physically, just strange. Like it wasn't mine anymore, like I didn't belong there. Inside, I locked the doors, checked the windows, paced the living room until my legs shook. My phone showed 2 missed calls from my sister. She'd tried me at 10:30, then again at 11. I hadn't answered. What was I supposed to say? That night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the images returned. Burning cities, oceans rising, the woman's frozen stare, and beneath it all, the humming vibration, still lodged somewhere deep in my skull. By morning, I told myself I'd imagine it, but when I showered, I found more proof. On my left thigh, just above the knee, was another mark, a tiny puncture surrounded by faint bruising. And when the water hit it, I felt a sting so sharp it made me stumble. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever they had done to me, it wasn't over.
The days after that night blurred together, but the fear never left me. Every sound outside, every flicker of light through my window set my nerves on fire. I kept replaying what happened in my head over and over like a broken film reel. At first, I thought maybe I'd just had some kind of breakdown. Maybe I'd worked too hard. Maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing. That's what I wanted to believe, but the evidence wouldn't let me. The marks on my body didn't fade. The circular burn on the back of my neck stayed raw and red for days. The bruise on my wrist pulsed faintly at night like something was moving under the skin. And the puncture on my thigh, it itched constantly as though it was healing around something foreign. I tried not to think about the woman I'd seen on the other table. Who was she? Where was she now? Was she out there, sitting in her own house, just as terrified as I was? Or had she never made it back? I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not my family, not my friends. I couldn't. The words died in my throat every time I imagined their reaction. They'd look at me with that mix of pity and disbelief, the kind of look you never come back from. But the real proof came 3 nights later. I woke up at 3:14 a.m. to a humming sound, low, steady, vibrating the walls of my bedroom. My heart froze. I sat up in bed, straining my ears. It wasn't coming from outside.
It was inside. I stood slowly, every muscle tense, and listened. The sound pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, as if it were synced to me. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping the beam across the room. And that's when I saw it. On my wrist, where the bruise had been, the skin glowed faintly, blue. I stumbled back, my breath ragged, and pressed my hand against it. The light dimmed, then pulsed stronger. I could feel it, something beneath the skin, responding to my touch, alive in ways I didn't understand. The humming grew louder. I don't know what possessed me, but I ran to the bathroom, grabbed a razor blade from the cabinet, and held it against the glowing spot. My hand shook violently. The thought of cutting into myself terrified me, but the idea of leaving whatever it was inside me terrified me more. I pressed the blade down. The pain was immediate, sharp and hot. Blood welled up instantly, but beneath it, something else surfaced. A sliver of metallic sheen. Not silver exactly, but something brighter, something that shimmered unnaturally under the bathroom light. I gagged, almost fainting. The object was real. They had put something in me. My vision swum, and I dropped the blade into the sink. My body went weak, my knees buckling as I collapsed onto the cold tile. The humming stopped. And in that silence, I realized something horrifying. It hadn't just been sound. It had been a signal. To them. The next morning, I wrapped my wrist in bandages, telling myself it was just an accident, that I'd cut myself on a tool at work. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't free. I carried their mark, their device, whatever it was, a tracker, an implant, maybe something worse. I didn't know, but I could feel it, even when it didn't glow, even when the humming was gone. It was part of me now. And I was terrified they'd come back for it. Weeks passed. I avoided people, made excuses not to see my family, ignored calls from friends. My life shrank down to the walls of my house, my job, and the gnawing paranoia that I was being watched. But one evening, as I drove home from work, same road, same wooded stretch, I noticed something that froze my blood. A car behind me, black, unmarked, following too close. At first, I thought it was just a careless driver. I slowed, but it slowed too. I sped up, and so did it. The headlight stayed locked on my mirror, unwavering. Finally, I pulled over to the side of the road, pretending to check my phone. The car slowed as it passed. And that's when I saw the driver. Two men, dark suits, pale faces, both staring straight ahead, never glancing at me. It could have been coincidence, it could have been nothing, but my gut told me otherwise. I waited 5 minutes, then got back on the road. When I reached home, the house felt different again. Wrong. I checked every lock twice, then collapsed into a chair, head in my hands. My wrist throbbed beneath the bandages. The images from that night still played in my head, and the memory of the woman's eyes haunted me. I knew I couldn't keep this inside forever, so now I'm telling you. I don't care if you believe me or not. I don't care if you call me crazy. I need this story out there, because if they come back, and I know they will, someone needs to know what happened to me. I was taken, experimented on, marked, and every night since I feel them closer, watching, waiting. If I disappear, if one day I just stop showing up, you'll know why. Because they'll have come back for me.